On this episode of What's Going On with Shipping, we do a little Shipping 101 with a discussion about ships, insurance, registries, and classification. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So, I've been talking a lot about what was happening recently up in the Black Sea and a lot with ships. And I had a viewer comment, "Hey Sal, it'd be a great idea to do a video which talks about maybe the basics of shipping so that those who watch the channel don't know a lot about shipping can have some basic definitions on some of the things that we have been talking about." Thought it was a perfect idea. Thought I'd put this together for you today. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. So our first discussion is going to be about ships and different ship types. And we're going to use a chart put together over at the Geography of Transport Systems. Really two different types of cargo are carried, what's called general cargo and bulk cargo. But we can break our ships down into 5 categories: break bulk, neo bulk, containerized, liquid bulk, and dry bulk. So to give you an example of each of those, I pulled ships from the active U.S. Merchant Marine. I'm a good red-blooded American. So break bulk, what we're talking about here is the loading of drums, bags, pallets, and boxes. These ships represent about 7% of the world's tonnage. This is the motor vessel Ocean Giant, kind of a jack-of-all-trade type vessel. I love ships like this. They have these large, expansive cargo holds. They have ship cranes to handle oversized cargo, and they can carry containers, they can carry wind turbine blades, they can carry just about a little bit of everything. They are just a all-purpose kind of general cargo ship. And very common type ship, what we would call a freighter throughout most of history. Today, they are just kind of a little bit of a niche out there doing a market. Then you have the neo bulk, and these are ships that carry lumber, paper, steel, vehicles, lift on, lift off, roll on, roll off. Perhaps the best example of that is this. This is the ARC Commitment. ARC is American roll-on, roll-off carrier. This is the U.S. subsidiary of Wilhelm Wallenius. This ship is part of the Maritime Security Program, kind of a basic car carrier, what we'll see. Either a pure car carrier, PCC, or a pure car and truck carrier, a PCTC. Very basic vessel. What you have in there are just decks. I mean, it's just a huge parking deck. And then on top there is the crew facilities, the bridge, living accommodations, galley, and then the engine room back aft. Very standard type of vessel that we see. Then we have one we talk about a lot on this channel, which are container ships. This is Maersk Denver. One of my favorite ships, actually, in the world is Maersk Denver. This was the ship that was just astern of the Ever Given in the Suez Canal on that memorable day back in March of 2021. Container ships, lift on, lift off, represent about 13% of the world tonnage. Now, container ships have grown massively during their lifetime. Go back to 1956, the SS Ideal X carried a grand total of 58 containers. Today, we have ships that carry up to 24,000 containers. Most container ships do not have facilities to offload their own containers. They require lift-on, lift-off capabilities. Those are those ship-to-shore cranes that we see out there all the time. Then we get into that other type of cargo, which is bulk cargo. And bulk cargo comes down to kind of 2 different methods. One is liquid petroleum, liquefied natural gas, chemicals, you name it, standard tanker. This is overseas Key West, a kind of very typical tanker. In this case, overseas Key West operates between the U.S. Gulf Coast and the U.S. East Coast, largely Texas to Florida. About 35% of the world's tonnage are tankers. And again, you can have crude oil, chemical, or liquefied natural gas. And then the last one we have is one that has really taken off, and that is bulk trade. Here is motor vessel Liberty Glory. This is a bulk carrier. It carries coal, iron ore, grains, bauxite, salt, you name it. They can do this by either grabbing the cargo with those onboard cranes, or they'll use suctions and conveyors to remove the cargo from the vessel. These ships represent about 40% of the world's tonnage and is part of the largest sector growing in the world's fleet. If we look at this chart by UNCTAD, the UN Conference on Trade and Development, you'll see here back in 1985, the world's merchant fleet was roughly just under 700 million tons of ship out there, and it was broken up between oil tankers, the bulk carriers that we talked about. Those are those two bulk carriers. And then you have the general cargo. This would include basically your roll on, roll off, and those specialized heavy lift ships, container ships, and then other types of vessels. But notice right around 2005 is when we see everything blow up. And all of a sudden, we see a massive expansion. We see an expansion of the bulk carriers, and we see expansion of container ships, so that now we're at almost 2.5 billion tons of cargo ship out there in terms of carrying capacity. Absolutely massive. And we look at the movement of goods. Trade has also blossomed from about 6 billion tons of cargo moved in 2000 to about 8 billion tons in 2005. By 2015, we're up over 10 billion tons, and now we're sitting at close to 12 billion tons. So that covers the ships portion. Let's talk about our second area, which is insurance. Now, to understand shipping, you need to understand insurance. And for that, we go over to the international group of P&I clubs. Now, P&I clubs are protection and indemnity. The 12 P&I clubs comprise the international group, and between them, they cover about 90% of the world's ocean-going tonnage. Now, they have a great video on here that I will link to that talks about this, on what exactly P&I insurance is and how it operates. But basically, they cover liabilities, loss of life, personal injuries to the crew and passengers and others on board, cargo loss and damage, pollution, wreck removal, collision, and damage to property. This is something we talk about all the time on the channel, is this issue of P&I insurance and how it provides the protection, so that when Dolly hits the bridge in Baltimore, that is the P&I club. When Ever Given gets stuck in the Suez, P&I club. One of the problems we have in ships in the Black Sea, for example, in the most recent attacks on the Black Sea, is there's a question about those ships having insurance. Who is going to pay for the wreck removal, for the salvage, for the overhaul of those vessels? Now, there are 12 large P&I clubs that are out there. You have the American Steamship, you have Britannia, you have Guard, you have North Standard, you have the London P&I Club, you have the Japanese Ship Owners Manual, you have Ship Owners, you have Skuld, Steamship Mutual, West, UK P&I, and the Swedish Club. These 12 groups represent the heart of protection and indemnity insurance. And the way they work is they pool their resources together so that you will have insurance with a specific group. If you need more, they basically insure each other, and then there is a larger reinsurance, so much so that you can go up to about $3.1 billion in insurance that ships are covered by. And insurance is absolutely essential for ship operations. What we're seeing today, but because of the shadow fleet, this parallel fleet that's being operated by both Iran, Venezuela, and largely Russia today, ships do not have as much insurance as we think they do. And this creates a problem in that you can have ships sailing off your coast without insurance. Should there be an accident, who is going to cover the wreck? You would think the International Maritime Organization, which is the UN shipping arm, would mandate insurance on vessels, but they really don't. This only happens when ships are inspected. This is part of what's called port state control. When ships sail into harbors, into ports, they fall under port state control, regardless of what flag they fly. And that takes us to our third issue here, which is registries. Now, for most of human history, ships were identified with the country of origin, basically where the crew was from, where the ship was built, where it operated from. And up until World War II, this was the norm. But during World War II, we saw the introduction of an open registry, specifically Panama, used by the United States to circumvent neutrality laws to get aid to initially the British and later on other allied nations. After World War II, the proliferation of open registries happened with the creation of the Liberian Registry, eventually Marshall Islands, and a whole slew of other ones. So much so that those three, Liberia, Panama, and the Marshall Islands, represent over 40% of the world's ships. Today, Liberia is the largest registry as of 2025 with 424 million deadweight tons of shipping. Panama close behind, 371, and Marshall Islands at 305. And then Hong Kong and Singapore bringing it up. Today, what we see, the norm here are these open registries. You'll hear them termed every now and then flags of conveniences. I would say you have to be careful with that term. Back in the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of issues with some of these registries in particularly. But through international laws, things like SOLAS, the safety of life at sea, and more importantly, the Marine Pollution Convention, MARPOL, now nations can inspect these vessels when they come into port and ensure they're meeting the minimum international standard that's out there, port state control. The problem we're seeing today is ships aren't coming into nations where they're exercising port state control. For example, shadow fleet vessels will load oil in a port, for example, in Russia, maybe go out to an anchorage off Spain, off Malaysia, transfer their fuel, and then come back to Russia without going into another country that will exercise port state control. And that creates a lot of problems that we have ships operating out there without proper insurance, without proper registries. In the case of the two ships recently up in the Black Sea, we're filming this in December of 2025, there were two ships flagged in Gambia, but Gambia had removed their registries. They were technically stateless vessels, and one of them we know doesn't have insurance, and we're not sure about the other. So this is why insurance is really important. And registries, extremely important, because registries ensure that ships are meeting those requirements. Now, there is another entity that exists out there that ensures compliance, and that's called classification. The International Association of Classification Societies, the IACS, is one of the major trade groups out there that represent a slew of these classification societies. Specifically, they represent these 12 classification societies. These are 12 of the largest. So American Bureau of Shipping in the United States, Bureau Veritas over in France, the China Classification Society, the Indian Registry of Shipping, DNV, the Croatian Register of Shipping, Korean Registry, Lloyd's Register, which is over in England, Class NK in Japan, Turk Lloyd, RINA, and then the Polish Register of Shipping. And these 12 major classification societies, are usually required to ensure that ships meet all their certification requirements. Usually they're a component of insurance. You can't get insurance without classification. What a classification basically does, it's like having car inspection. It's an outside agency that comes in and makes sure that everything is operating properly. They'll give you a schedule of events on how to do your dry docking, ensure that you're doing the required maintenance on the vessel, and basically that the ships are operating within the standards set for by both the registry and insurance. Again, one of the problems we're having with the shadow fleet is that we're seeing lapses in classification societies because if you don't have insurance, can't have classification. And so classification, registry, and obviously insurance are some of the big issues. So a quick video that talks about those 4 key elements: types of ships that are out there, insurance, registry, and classification. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? You hit the super thanks button down below or head on over to Patreon and become a monthly, yearly subscriber. I'll have links to all those sites that I just referenced in the show notes down below and as links. Until the next episode, this is Sal. Sign off.